Okay, so welcome to our session. This is about governance, how it combines ownership for the well-being of community. So we'll try to do this one a little differently, mostly because I'm supposed to be moderating and a speaker at the same time, so I have to try to keep track of everybody. And unfortunately, I know that you guys have a lot to say and it's interesting, so I'll try to cut you off as nicely as possible, probably with like this. Yeah, and if I run too long, check me on it too. All right. So first, can you guys give me a brief self-introduction? And not just what you do, but I think also why you're doing what you're doing, right? Because motivation is a huge part of everything. So, Andy?
Sure. Hey guys, I'm Andy. I'm the technical co-founder of Scaling. Previously, I worked at Synthetics as a lead governance architect. I actually started Synthetics as a front-end engineer, but fell down the rabbit hole of governance. And I found it very interesting. What I do at Scaling is I empower Web3 builders, which means, we try to get the next million builders into the space, whether you're doing design, development. And the reason why I'm doing it comes back to the story of when I was 18, my first year of college. That's when I got into Web3. I dropped out of college to pursue a recurring payments platform on Ethereum. And during that time, there was no support for people like ourselves. So it was just three guys with a big dream, not listening to our parents, building something we liked. And why I'm doing Scaling now is because I want to solve that problem. I want to be there for that past self, that past person that I was, through providing the tools and the mentors and the networks for that. Yeah.
Max?
Hi guys, I'm Max. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Carbon Base. And essentially, we are building core market infrastructure for the climate change problem. One of the key reasons that I think we're very motivated to do this is because over the next 5 to 7 years, we have probably an irreversible window to fundamentally determine the future 200 years of the human race. And the casualties, if we get it wrong, are going to be in the order of billions of people. So we have looked at climate change as a problem for the last 10 years. And really in the last 3 years, we've come to this conclusion that the tools of blockchain are perfectly matched for the problem of climate change. And over the course of the panel, I'll try to share a bit more of how that sort of realization came to be, but that's kind of a core motivation for me, myself. And then beyond this, I also served as venture partner for Hong Kong Family Office, doing Web3 investments for a few years. So really looking at the creation and also unsuccessful creation of Web3 companies have given me a lot of personal reflections of what good governance looks like at a project level.
Hi everyone, so my name is David Ham. So right now I'm Director of Business Development for a blockchain security company called Certic, leading Korea and other APAC business. So I've been in this space for about 12 years. What motivates me to stay here and keep doing this? I see that the technology has a major impact, potential for impact. We see the change, and I see that there is this movement towards adoption. What's adoption? It's perhaps this technology could provide us with, again, a new way of money, a new way of payments, a new way of thinking, governance, community. So I see that it's this technology that is so unique that is continually changing, the environment that we're in. So I see that there's an opportunity. I think we're a long way there, and that's what motivates me to be here today. Yeah.
My name's Annie Wong. I mainly got into crypto because of financial inclusion, actually. So I started out trading NFTs, got really into an NFT community, and we started a DAO for investments into it. And that's when it really starts, right? You're like, how are people who are able to only have a few $100s come together to invest in something that usually only really high net worth or entities can go into? And I think this is another extension of microfinancing. We all know microfinancing, it really helped the world. It really did, maybe in more developing countries, but right now there is so much wealth inequality, even say in the US, since the information age. So this is something I really believe in, where I really think this can benefit globally. So next question. So not just for yourselves, but for the Web3 community. So everybody who you're dealing with, who's a part of your community, what's their biggest motivation?
I'll start. Look, in synthetics, at scaling, a common theme, the number one is financial incentive. With DeFi popping up, NFTs coming out, a lot of the buzz amongst the young people, but also the community is, I want to build in Web3 to make money. But I'm pretty sure that's pretty obvious. So there is a second one, and that is the social side of things, the social side of the community. And when I look at it, it reminds me of when, we were a bit younger, when you used to meet online friends through games, right? Of course, when you grow up, you don't play as many games anymore, you lose these friends. But now we are, in this Web3 community where you're able to trade NFTs, collect art together, play games together, trade together, and it does feel like a game. And that is a big common theme also within these communities because, you're sharing memes. There's meme channels in Discords. People, getting trading tips, all that good stuff that is really exciting, and it keeps people together. And it's even better when you go to conferences and you meet in real life. So I think that's another factor of the community as well.
I get that. Max?
Riff off a previous very insightful comment. I think when the crypto market was booming or busting, when I was traveling, you go to a new city, you don't know anyone, right? But you sort of see the people in the audience, and if you know they're in crypto, you have immediate common language with them, like either the pain of like all of you losing money, yesterday, or all of the joy of actually having made, crazy amounts of money the day before. And I think that sort of connectivity of like human social tissue is so beautiful, right? Because that is a identity that's independent of race, ethnic gender, language. You just sort of have a common shared human experience. One of the most powerful things I experienced actually was going to COP25. This is the climate change conference of the UN. And I'd spent a lot of time researching and writing about climate change before. When I went there, I noticed that the people who are most engaged at these UN climate change conferences are actually the leaders, the CEOs of small to medium-sized countries, right? The presidents, prime ministers, because they represent their ability to defend or preserve the lives of their citizens. And if they don't get it right, then hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people are going to suffer back home. And I think really this concept of like one planet, one earth, one sort of shared humanity was more readily apparent to me in these conferences than I had fully realized before. And I think that's also what motivates a lot of our existing community today. We have people who have 10, 20 years of work experience coming in and volunteering their time, not because they want to make money here, but because they feel like it's the right thing to do. And I think that also is a very rewarding social part of working in this kind of social impact climate space as well.
So I think, most people who are part of communities, and most communities are driven for that search or that, seeking value, right? So I think, kind of everything that was mentioned is kind of within that space, right? So if we're looking for financial value or we're looking to, be a part of a community or be a part of some technology or, I want to be a part of that crowd, we're trying to find some value, right? And again, a community drives value for a project, but a project also drives value for community. And I think that search for value, whatever it is I think what drives communities to where they are or where they go, right?
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. So we actually did market research on it, and it's true. The first is financial gain. The second thing is, what else is there? Because you have a certain number, and then when you reach it, as humans, we're really greedy, so then we want more. And then is it always money, or is it something more intangible? You want to contribute, you want to give back, you want someone to understand you, you want someone to lose money the same way you did. Misery loves company. So I completely agree with this. All right. I think this next question is probably one of my favorites. And I think, Andy, you really liked it too, right? So it's, what's the greatest value that the Web3 community aims to achieve through governance? So should we go back? David, you want to start?
Okay. The greatest achievement through governance? Well, I mean, in Web3, blockchain really, it's about decentralization, right? I think people want to see that, big companies, big services, the things that we're very familiar with become more of our own, right? A centralized service, we all use Google, we all use all these other services, but very centralized. I believe that sort of decentralization also leads to having some ownership or having some say in the organization or control of any organization or anything, right? So I think that, what people are looking for in governance is to be able to have a little bit of control, a little bit of, opinion in, the things that we do every day. Again, I think decentralization, Web3, seeks to solve that issue. It's not necessarily a problem because some things are okay when it's Web2, but I think giving back that control to people is what governance is all about, right? So,
Max, go ahead.
I want to be more philosophical here, and I'll say a few things. So first thing is, when people look at like happiness, right, like quality of life over a human lifespan, like the amount of money you have is totally not correlated to that. Like some of the most miserable people are the richest people in the world. Some of the happiest people are the poorest people in the world. What really matters is you have enough money to feed yourself and the people you care about. You also have money to sort of experience new things. And then beyond that, the rest of your life and your attention of your life is dedicated to actually enriching your personal journey and fundamentally helping other people. I want to say that capitalism has totally tricked us into thinking that having more material possessions makes you happy. It totally does not make you happy. Helping other people makes you infinitely happier. And for those of you guys who haven't personally lived through that experience, come find me afterwards and we can have a whole side session. But with that mindset, I want to tell you a story about an interesting company called Swift. Right? Swift has been demonized by certain blockchain companies as being kind of the old antiquated school. But the funny story about Swift is actually the owners of Swift, the shareholders, are also the customers. And what this leads to is that every time the CEO has an annual report, the CEO sweats a lot and gets really nervous when he makes too much money because it means that he's overcharging his actual shareholders. And a friend of mine works at Swift, and he basically tells me funny stories how they try to give away money at the end of the year as much as possible so it actually doesn't show up like they've made too much money. That is such a radical reconception of a corporate enterprise than the things we look at today, which is basically exploit your users as much as possible, squeeze them to a pulp, right, and then sort of take all the value that they have and give it to some anonymous fat cat sitting on top of the capitalist food chain. And I think the opportunity we have in this whole reimagination of the decentralized asset economy is actually to build more companies that look like Swift and have more people be shareholders, right? If we have 1 billion people be shareholders of a particular protocol or chain, then naturally the people who work that chain care about their shareholders and they care about more people. And I think we're at the very beginning of a social transformation facilitated by blockchain actually to build and define new types of human value economies. And I think that journey is going to make us happier, make us live longer, but also make the world slightly better.
Yeah, I just want to lean on to that as well. If we were talking about theory, yes, the theory of governance is, reducing the amount of censorship that you have, including a lot of people, allowing a lot of people like in the community to have a say where the product goes, the project goes. But when we look at the actual practical implementation of governance out there at the moment, it's still not to the dream that we all want it to be. Most of governance is what I believe to be theater at the moment. It might just be because what I believe is that there's not enough tools to support building a proper governance system. There's other projects opening, a DAO model to, do something legal or maybe just to ride on the trend to get more funding because they think it's trendy still. But yeah, in theory, yes, it's, distributing that power, serving your customer base, making them more shareholders. But in practical reality, we're still, what I believe, a long way to get there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also agree with what you were saying, David, where I think at base, it's giving people the power to say no. Because unless you're a founder and you're crazy enough to want to control everything, which is incredibly tiring, most people don't want to live that way. So most of the time you want an organization just to run, right? And for you just to be able to say no when it's something you disagree with, and the rest of the time you're okay with it. And for me, that's the greatest value, that I can say no. All right, in your opinion, I guess this time we'll start with Max. What's the most remarkable case accomplished by Web3 through governance? You already talked about Swift, so I don't know if you have another story.
Yeah, I think for me, Bitcoin is this amazing story because one guy wrote like 11 pages of text, right? And this 11 pages then translated into, let's say, 100 engineers writing 1 million lines of code. And this 1 million lines of code led to 1 million people, right? Like moving physical matter out of the air, digging digging stuff out of the ground, pounding it, turning to chips, and then shipping it overseas, and then rerouting giant electrical cables to basically power these chips to create the hash rate that now we see as a Bitcoin infrastructure. So the ability for us to have simple economic design that then lead to transformative economies, I think that's at the essence of crypto. And to me, what I'm looking to do actually is to apply this entire metaphor for the climate problem. So people who actually wake up every morning and find ways to put carbon in the ground or reduce the amount of environmental degradation can earn money assigned to them through this kind of third-party electronic formats. That's, I think, a possibility that is just within our grasp. So when I look at blockchain, and builders, I try to tell people, you're not building a company. You are building an economy. And if you think about it from an economy lens, right, whatever you build makes sense or it doesn't make sense. You quickly have a good sniff test for assessing whether or not particular projects are going to succeed or fail. And the last person, one small thing I want to share here is there's a lady you guys all should look up as you build blockchain economies called Elinor Ostrom. And Elinor Ostrom is the first female to win the Nobel Prize in economics. And her research goes into how do you build and sustain long-term value economies. There's so much knowledge that she's kind of curated that's useful and relevant for us.
I'll start with a funny, remarkable one, I think. Back in 2020, DeFi summer, when governance started becoming a thing, the Yam Finance governance vote proposal was pretty remarkable. But that's the funny one. The more biased one is looking back at synthetics itself. It's pretty amazing to look back at it and see how strong the community is and to see that the community actually cares about shipping new proposals. Although the governance isn't perfect there, it's pretty remarkable to see these councils operate, people working full-time on just becoming a council member and reviewing code or writing SIPs, which is the improvement proposal. That's pretty impressive for me to see.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with Max on Bitcoin, so that was what I was going to say. So I'm also a little bit of a Maxi as well too, but Bitcoin is pretty remarkable. And if you haven't read the white paper and you're in this industry, please do read that first, right? So Bitcoin is probably one of the the base sort of currencies or technologies in our industry. It's the one that kind of signals everything. No one controls it, but it's governed by miners and people who are participating in this economy, right? Powering this economy, creating this economy, enabling sort of this new form of currency or money, or some people call freedom, right? So I think that that's one of the most brilliant forms of community governance, because it's the community that has created Bitcoin, which has actually helped us all to be here today, right? If it wasn't for that Bitcoin community, the Bitcoin dev community, probably we would not be here discussing about governance, Web3, etc. I think it is probably one of the most extraordinary demonstrations of that, and it's why I'm here as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's true. It's really showing like this is what the man can really do. And so same thing. So when I got into this space, I got really deep into an NFT community. It was called Neo Tokyo. It's a GameFi one. And after the founders raised about 20 million from us, they just disappeared. They didn't leave the server. They just kind of disappeared. I want to say it was like a semi-slow rug. But what was remarkable is then you kind of have a situation where it's like Lord of the Flies. You have all these kids who had people in charge, and now suddenly we don't. So what happens, right? And the fun thing is that people really did step up. They did become the leaders. Not everybody wants to be a leader. Not everybody needed to be. And so it's fun where you got people who were governing, but there were enough people who supported them to keep the community going. Like, everybody was invested and they were interested, so it still became a name. And a big part of that is what you were talking about earlier, Andy. It's like a survival, right? This is your one-stop shop for consolidated information about the NFT space. I want to make money. These people understand me. I trust them. And so here we are, and we're still going strong. All right, so next question is, what are some governance designs that foster user participation? Do you want to start, David?
Okay, that's a tough one.
I know.
So I didn't see that question on the sheet. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I think, creating and having a very dynamic community that's very involved in whatever it is, I think that's the best design. It's designed by example. It's designed by involvement. If you have a community that cares, that's vested, and really is, again, looking for value in what they're involved in, then I think that community will drive true, improved, necessary governance. Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly technical. I'm not an engineer, so I think if I say from a design perspective, I wouldn't be able to. But I think it's a community that's really involved, that just wants to be there. I think that's a really good way to true proper governance.
Max?
I was on Twitter and I stumbled into this ApeCoin DAO discussion, and I thought it was kind of interesting. So I sort of listened to it for a while and ended up, asking some questions. And I think there's a new job that's going to be available soon, right? Which is like to be a sort of governance member for these kind of DAO communities that have treasuries, right? And there's, the ape guys were talking about how much you're going to pay these guys to actually look at and approve proposals. It's a very substantial amount of money. In Hong Kong, I've been very lucky to actually be appointed on the board of a bank, right? This is a traditional Web 1.5 institution, and we have board meetings where we discuss things like how much should we pay the CEO, who should we, do strategy and other stuff. And working through the board process and then looking at the crypto community, like essentially it's allowing a lot of people who are young and intelligent to be board members way earlier than they would ever be in traditional society. That's really what I think this kind of DAO process is. And I find that extremely exciting because, to be completely honest, there are some really old people in positions of power in the world today. Like, they're really old. And the concerns and challenges that we need to go through are needed by young people like yourselves, or you guys are sort of the voice of the future. And the more that we can empower young people to be at the seat of power, the more useful solutions we can come up with. So I think part of it, one side is, how do we actually get as many people to want to participate as possible, right? To be able to, have this process of engaging democratic, decision making. The other side is, how do we actually get more of you guys on the boards of both Web 2 and Web 3 companies? So that's something really excited about and hope to figure out more solutions for.
Yeah, I can expand on a lot about design models. I spent a lot of time in synthetics doing it. So I'll give an example. So 2021, I did a lot of research in transitioning the synthetics, what it was, just a Discord vote. It was, react to this message and yes or no. That's basically the governance system. But upon reiterating on it, the one I found that works for synthetics, which they currently use, which is called the delegated council model. It's like what Max says, it's like a democracy. And the reason why, I chose to implement it this way was we actually saw a lot of voter apathy, which is basically, voters don't care, they're not gonna vote, or they don't have enough context. So one of the big reasons of this is, what was called the SDAO, which is synthetics DAO, which was the multi-sig that actually, pushed through technical changes to the blockchain. I just started synthetics and I didn't even know how that worked as a technical person, let alone, you're expecting the community to know and review this code. So that delegated council model actually then allows you as a voter, as a community holder, to vote who you think can best represent your decisions by using their knowledge and their context. So you will vote in people who are engineers, but would be risk off or risk on according to your own preferences. So in synthetics you do 6 months. There's 6 months epochs, and at the end of each 6 months there's an election where you take your tokens. It's not one token, one vote, because that was tried everywhere in all the DeFi farms. It's using quadratic weighting, so it prevents the oligarchy being formed, but it's not perfect. There's still so much work to be done. I can't stress that enough. So that may work for synthetics. The Graph implemented a Bored Ape also implemented a council model, but the best advice for you for governance is look at your community, look how they operate. If it's big, it's a totally different model. If it's small, it's a totally different model. If it's big, you have enough community members to actually care. If it's small enough, you might just be able to do one token, one vote, and it works, like a group of friends. So, yeah.
That makes sense. The one that I like best is not Web3 at all. It's actually from the US. It's not their Republic model per se, but they do have a rule if you look under the SECs where they have investment clubs. So these people, they don't have to be accredited investors necessarily, but if you have a group of 99 people or less, you can pool your money together to invest in the normal type of investments that we do as VCs. And it's really cool, right? Because this kind of gives you the leeway that we think about Web3 does. The rule about it, though, is that in order to prevent it from becoming a security, and therefore illegal, is everybody has to participate. And so if you don't, then you risk basically killing the party for everybody and risking expulsion on your own. So I actually quite like that, where the burden is on everybody. Like, diffused responsibility doesn't usually work, but also nobody really wants to be able to be like, well, my bad, sorry, the reason why we can't have fun anymore is me, So I really like that one.
Well, I mean, I think people need to be interested as well, right? So, countries have votes, right? And voters have, the power to put people in power, right? But, they talk about, there was like 53% voter turnout, right? So 47% of the people just did not care, right? And so I think in proper governance, people need to care, right? And need to be really interested in what it is that they're participating in.
Yeah, it's true. All right, this is the last question. We've done really well on time, by the way. Good job. So how would you conclude with predictions about the future of Web3? Like, what would you think it looks like? Maybe 10 years is a little bit too far in advance, so we can go for 1 year, 2 years? What do you think? You want to start, Andy?
Yeah, we'll go 5 years. 5 years less. My prediction in terms of governance is the DAOs will still exist. DAO tooling will come more, like it will advance a bit more. There will be, more products around identity and reputation because we're still missing that within our DAO tooling suite. Right now, it's just tokens and being anonymous. With that too, the whole DAO model, the future of that will be different payment models, different working life balances. There might be, full-time, part-time, but also the contractor role is more like a grant role, bounty role, where you're actually just contributing to different DAOs. But to get there, we have to focus on building DAO tooling first. And my favorite ones are reputation and identity, so that elections can actually be worthwhile. Yeah.
Max?
A few comments about potential futures we live in. One is I think Lich is going to be an awesome conference. So it's going to be, bigger and better in the future.
There's one in Hong Kong in June.
Yeah. Awesome. On a personal note for our work in climate change, I think that we're going to see this awareness and pickup of institutional guys recognizing that blockchain is the perfect tool to get billions of people to care about climate change. And they're going to care not only because they're morally incentivized to care, but because there's going to be financial incentives to care. Right? We have to play to earn, move to earn. We're trying to create something called preserve to earn. If you preserve the planet, you earn money. And I think that's going to hopefully be a thing. The way that we're going to try to fund preserve to earn is that we're taking this really cool book called Ministry for the Future, we're turning it into reality. So if you guys haven't seen this book, it's about a lady implementing something called CQE, Carbon Quantitative Easing. The goal is basically to get the biggest central banks of the world to create trillions of dollars that can only be earned if you actually use it to save the planet. And I think that blockchain is going to be the rails for this dissemination. How do you prevent fraud from happening? You have individual wallets with great reputation systems and identity. You basically pay people directly to their wallets. So that's a little projection of our personal field. And I think on the larger kind of governance side, the boundaries of like corporate governance, right, of a company and DAO governance is really just going to fuse together. I think that's where we're going. So the countries that allow people to think about DAOs in a legally compliant manner are going to really see a lot more registration. Kind of like what we see today with the Cayman Islands. Have you guys ever been to the Cayman Islands? Like, I don't think anyone's been to Cayman Islands, but this is where most of the largest companies in the world are headquartered. So imagine places in the world where we actually have intelligent design of DAO governance. Everyone in the world is going to try to create their company there because they can get the benefits of intelligent design. And then finally, I want to say this. I think we're at the beginning of creating new countries. Balaji's Network State book has really hit some gunpowder. But I think that there is an opportunity for us to redesign who do we associate with, who do we pay taxes for, right? And how does those taxes come back to help fund and create livelihoods that matter to us? Those questions are never before possible today, and I think they will be possible in the near future. So I think this concept of governance is going to be even more important when we start creating network states.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. Like, early Bitcoiners all sort of started migrating to Puerto Rico because of, the no tax, right? The U.S. and, more developed sort of economies, so to speak, were charging massive taxes, right? So I guess I might be one of the few folks to be able to say this because, I started in blockchain industry, over 10 years ago. So what I've seen in the past 10 years is that there has been this real massive interest and movement towards decentralization and DAO governance and, so self-sovereign identity and utilizing, this technology to sort of have the freedom to say, freedom to be, drive value. It's taken a while, but actually in 10 years, it's a very short time. So I think in the next 10 years, I think we still have a little ways to go. So I've been working with a lot of corporates, some of my former employers. So I spent 20 years in the corporate world, and the mentality of decentralization is clearly not there, but they are interested in Web3. And so I've been trying to explain to them that if you are interested in Web3, you need to act Web3, right? You can't just say, oh, we're gonna do NFTs and give them out to everybody. You need to start thinking along the lines of really being decentralized. Is it possible? I don't know. I think in the next 10 years, that challenge is there, and I think we can start picking away at it because there are a lot of large organizations these days that are really starting to get open. They just don't know how. So I think this next 10 years is going to be about creating that process and helping them set the expectation that this is not going to be easy, but it could become really great, right? So I think that's going to be the next 10 years. Yeah.
I'm actually really glad you guys are going more macro because I'm going incredibly micro. So in terms of Web3 and community, today I was talking to somebody who manages about 50 people underneath him, and I go, hey, what's it like? And his answer goes, people have emotions. And that's basically it. So it's going to sound like what Alice said, but I think what you said was really true, right? It's going to be, as you get marketing technology involved, it's going to be helping people get involved. How do you segment people by their needs, wants, desires, but I think also expertise when it comes to community. So maybe a better form of governance is, are you really putting people effectively where they want to be and need to be and can be? And ultimately, I think if that happens with better DAO tooling, we can get that because right now we have Discord, Kakao, Telegram, WhatsApp, anything you can think about. People do want to be their own groups. Then it's just more about finding, where do I belong? Who can I trust? And where do I feel safe enough where I can share my information where we can all prosper together? So it might be idealistic, but I genuinely hope that this is how it'll be. And that was the last question. Is there anything else you guys want to say? Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.